I was going to start by mentioning this book I'm reading at the moment. And it's, let's see if I can oh, here we go. It's called The Midnight Library. And I've already asked Lynn and Christina if they've read it. I don't know, Kathleen or Lucia or Karen, have you read this book?
No.
Okay, very good. Anyway, truthfully, I haven't finished it, but it's an amazing story. It's kind of you might say it's a little bit of a parable. It's briefly, it's about a young woman who has had many opportunities to follow different pathways in her life, and she's chosen not to follow most of them. And then she's wondered, well, what would it have been if I had? And at some point, she's just kind of disappointed in herself, and she feels like she'd rather be dead than alive. And she ends up at this place between death and life called the Midnight Library, which has an infinite number of books in it. And the books are all possible lives she could have lived.
Wow.
Or in a multiverse, lives that she is living in different, versions of herself somewhere in other realms. And so she's invited to take a look at her book of regrets, which is a very heavy book, apparently. And it's all these lives she hasn't chosen to live. And she gets to go and choose now, okay, well, what if I chose this one? And then she jumps into that life, and she gets to jump out whenever she's disappointed with that life. So it's not long before she jumps right back out again because she feels disappointment. And this goes on, but each time she's learning, she's figuring out that there are always disappointments or difficulties in every life, and also always good things. So I don't know how it ends. I'll have to fill you in later on that. But I loved it because I was thinking in some way, we all have parts of our lives that we can look at as being different lives in a way. And as we grow and learn and move on to the next section of our life, it's like having a new life. But I'm going to skip to a couple of things here, hoping I can draw a through line to connect them. And if not, that'll be up to you to figure out. So there was another little piece that I read that came through Maria Popova. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She had something called a regular newsletter she called Brain Pickings, which she has now changed the name to the Marginalian. The Marginalian.
Yeah.
Right? Yes. And
what is it?
The Marginalian, like margin, alien. I'm not sure what she means by that, but what Maria does is she takes various literary works, pieces of them, and then links them to other literary works. So as she brings in a subject, then she'll say, check out what so-and-so says about this, and there's a link. And you can follow those breadcrumbs forever because each one has a link to another. In this particular one, it's about trees and how trees, to start the part on trees is there are many kinds of beautiful lives. And he talks about how trees in their very seeds, in seed form, give birth to what that tree is supposed to look like, supposed to be. But it can never be exactly the way that seed will describe it, because that would only exist in a world in which the sun never moves, and when there's exactly the right water of rainfall, when there's no wind or lightning or anything to hurt the tree. And that's not how it is. So you have trees that take on all these different shapes based upon all this that they've had to deal with in their tree life, whether, like I say, lightning or fire harsh winds, whatever, that cause the tree to be broken in places, but then it'll grow a new branch. So it takes on a shape that reflects what it has had to go through. And so this becomes a beautiful kind of life in and of itself. Now I'm going to jump to someone else. I'm going to talk a little bit about Corita. And this is because Lynn sent me something about Corita. Thank you. And I'll just read it right off of here. First of all, this little cartoon figure version here, it was written by a man named Matthew Burgess. Okay. And he never knew Corita. He was way too young to have ever met her. But he heard about her, and then he read about her, and then he made this little what I would call a kind of a cartoon-like story of her life, because he was so impressed with her. So let me just read this to you. Doing and making are acts of hope. And as that hope grows, we stop feeling overwhelmed by the troubles of the world. We remember that we as individuals and groups can do something about those troubles. Poets and artists, makers, look long and lovingly at commonplace things, rearrange them, and put their rearrangements where others can notice them too. And so all of this is starting to make sense to me about the various lives that we lead, or in this case, in the Midnight Library, the possible lives, about how trees create a life from what happens to them and make themselves into a shape that can work. And then I want to reflect, to throw in one more little thing here, and that is related to my soul collage workshop that I held yesterday. And I've been meeting with this group for about 3 years. And it's pretty much the same people show up each time. And we've gotten very, very comfortable with each other, feeling we've gotten to know each other, I guess is the way to put it. And so what are we doing? We're taking images and rearranging them to create a whole new little world on a 5x8 card. And then we get to talk about what that card says to us, how it speaks to us. And somehow in the process of being there, chatting with each other, cutting things out with scissors, pasting them down, showing each other the cards that we made, talking about what they mean, all of that does not really add up to what's really happening. What's really happening is that we've come to feel such a connection with each other. We've come to appreciate the beauty of each person in that group. And we are so happy to see each other once a month when we get together. So coming back to the word be, there is a line in Midnight Library that says, never underestimate the big importance of small things. And I think, Lynn, you also sent out something about Rose Marcario, right?
Yes.
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 Well, I knew Rose Marcario several years ago when she was the CFO of Nike, and she wanted to quit corporate altogether because she couldn't, the values did not align with hers. A friend of hers then said, well, Rose, Patagonia is looking for somebody. And it turns out Patagonia was the perfect alignment with Rose because it's the values of protecting the environment and the value of creating a good product. And that if the good product fails you, you bring it back, they'll give you another one. It's good values. And she says, ask questions that are so big, only your life can answer them. And then I want to say your life is the answer to all the big questions. So putting all this together, I guess, what these things meant to me was somehow every day just trying to be who you are as exactly who you are. In other words, not trying to be someone else or be like someone else or be competitive with someone else, but just being who you are makes an enormous difference, whether you're aware of it or not. And how do we know this? I guess in some ways, maybe we don't, but now and then maybe someone will come up to you and say to you, it made a big difference that you were here today. And you wonder, well, that's nice, but I don't know how that could be. But it's because you were simply who you were. And that was so important. Does that make sense?
Yes.
All these little pieces, rearranging and putting them together, like Harita was talking about. Okay, so there we are, open for discussion now.